Welcome to the second Space Policy Roundtable organized by the African Space Leadership Institute. My name is Timothy Young. I'm the CEO and co-founder of the African Space Leadership Institute. First, we need to render our unreserved apology. Due to unforeseen circumstances, Dr. Val Musami, who was supposed to be the moderator of this event, is not able to make it due to some emergencies. So I'll be moderating the discussion, and I hope we are going to have a good time. We have an excellent panel, and I will introduce them shortly. We look forward to an excellent discussion and outcome. In the course of the discussion, if you have any questions or comments, kindly use the chat box, which link below. To set the stage for the discussion, space-derived services are crucial for the economic development of the African continent. The benefits of these services have accrued to Africa indirectly as a consumer of services provided by multinational companies and intergovernmental organizations. While some of these products and services have helped to serve the social and economic needs of government, Africa cannot boast of possessing the technical know-how to participate effectively in space-related activities, and hence is largely reduced to a net consumer of space-derived products and services. This has limited Africa in terms of indigenous space sector, which is an high-end technology sector that has a myriad of direct and indirect benefits. However, we have seen of late that there are some African countries who have established space agencies or started space programs, some of them with a view of just owning satellites, maybe hundreds of satellites or a constellation of satellites. But if you take a closer look at what is going on, you will see that most of these satellites are actually procured from abroad. And due to that, the benefits of having a vibrant upstream or downstream sector, it's not there. And also there's little or no satellite manufacturing capability in these countries. On the flip side, if you look at it globally, there's a lot of interest in small satellite development due to advanced technologies, reduction in cost, quick delivery, and improving performance. So ideally, this should make satellite building viable, attractive, and sustainable in Africa. But this appears not to be the case. So the key objective of this panel is how we can change this narrative. I mean, to explore what are the issues on ground, what are the prospects, what are the potentials, what are the challenges we are observing. And like I mentioned when we are doing an informal introduction, we have representatives from the academia, from industry, and from government here, and from the different geopolitical regions of the continent. So I'll introduce each of the panelists briefly. To just be a brief introduction, in the course of registering for the event, you would have seen their full bio, so I won't go through their full bio right now. So I'll introduce them, and then I'll give them the floor to make some introductory remarks, and then I ask them a few questions, and then I open the floor to the audience. So I'll start with Dr. Anita Antwiwa. I hope I got the pronunciation right. Dr. Anita Antwiwa is the head of operations for All Nations University Space Systems Technology Laboratory, SSTL, who successfully launched the historic GhanaSat-1 in 2017 to take photographs of the Earth and to monitor Ghana's coastal areas. She's also the head of Department for Electronics and Communications Engineering at the All Nations University, Ghana. She holds a PhD in Electronics and Communications Engineering and a Master of Technology in Communication Systems Engineering, both from universities in India. Dr. Antwiwa, you have the floor, please.
Thank you very much. Good morning to everyone. I'm so excited to be part of the panel today. I hope you can hear me very well.
We can hear you, but if you would like to put on your video as well so that we can see your face too.
I think my location will not permit me to be on the video for a very long time.
Okay, it's fine. You're free. Whichever one is convenient for you.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so as you have introduced me, I think you've said all about me. So what we do, or what I do. So my name is Dr. Anita, as you rightly said, Anchiwa. The surname is Anchiwa. And I am working with All Nations University, Department of Electronics, and also ANU Space Systems Technology Laboratory. So what do we do in ANU SSTL? What happened was we established this laboratory in 2012, and our mission is to promote and build human capital in the area of space science and satellite technology through innovative research and development of education projects for the benefit of the entire society. So we began our journey with the CANSAT project, and we started with some students. I think we started with about 50 students to work on a CANSAT project. By the time we were through with our first CANSAT, the 50 students, I think we were left with only 7 students remaining, because it was very involving, and you need to really read or study before you be able to be part of this actively. So we began with 50. By the time we were launching, we were remaining with 7, and we launched our CANSAT in May 2013. So we went on to also build our amateur satellite ground station, which is operating on UHF VHF frequency. So after that, we sent our students to Japan to work on a satellite project. That is when they went for training, and we trained them, and they were able to build their GhanaSat-1, which was launched in 2017. So some of the activities that we embark on aside the satellite training activities include, we do capacity building. So we build capacity for the young ones, mostly those in the primary schools. We focus our attention to those in the primary schools, because that is where we can get them to fully appreciate why they should choose a science-related course. The curriculum in Ghana is in such a way that if a student leaves the primary school and goes to the secondary school, that place, we say that the fate of the person has been decided, because the discipline which you choose is directed towards a particular path. So if you choose science, it means you can only do science-related course. If you don't choose science, you will not be able to do any science-related course in the tertiary. So we focus our capacity building and sensitization in the primary schools, so that they will see the need to choose science-related courses. So some of the activities we do with them is satellite training, CANSAT training. Then we have antenna development, small antennas development training. We also organize research competition, space research competitions for students. As well as Space Week celebration, we organize all these things for the students so that they will get enthused with space activities. So aside that, we also organize training for ICT training for those in vocational and technical institutions, so that they will also get to appreciate why we should use the importance of using technology to advance their career. Okay, so aside these activities we have been organizing, we are working on 2 major projects as at now. The first one is the African constellation satellite where we are, that one too is the capacity building. So we are training some countries who are interested in building their own satellites. So we are still at the initial stage of the program. And the second one is the AFTERSAP program, which we are working together with Egypt and other countries. So far, that is the little introduction I can give about myself and what my institution is also doing. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Antwiwa. And while I still have you, you mentioned that your lab was actually established, if I recall correctly, in 2007, and that you've done some. I think you launched CanSat and then later GhanaSat-1. So if you want to gauge from when you started your activities up till maybe around your current up to now, how will you gauge students' interest in satellite engineering or satellite development? I know you had initial challenges when you started off with as much as 50 students, but that dropped drastically till about 7. So now that you've done some activities, what is it? How will you gauge the interest of students right now?
Okay, thank you very much for the question. I see students interested in this area, but the issue is about employment. We all realize that this field is very young in Africa, and we don't have a lot of companies who are working on satellite development. So after training the students to know how to develop a satellite, then what next? Because we don't have much companies to employ them to work. So because of that, even though they have the interest, that aspect scares them a lot, and it makes them not too ready to pick a career in the space industry, especially when it comes to satellite development. So that is one of the things I have noticed when it comes to the students' enthusiasm for the program. They really want to do it, but after learning what next? Okay, so aside that, I can see that we have prospects in Africa, and if we continue to do a lot of capacity building and we put in the right strategies, we'll be able to get to the level which we are expecting to get to in terms of space technology. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Let me ask you one more question, and that has to do with government support. Most of the activities you've been doing, I guess your school is a private university, and as you know, space activities or space projects are capital intensive. Are you seeking for government support? And if you're doing that, what has been the response from the government?
Oh, thank you very much for the question. Most of the activities, I think majority of the activities we have been organizing is from the university's coffers. Even though the government has the interest to support, sometimes they are tight when it comes to their budget. Because they will tell you they have a lot of issues which they have to address. So they putting so much money into space infrastructure at this moment, it's not something they are ready to do, not because they don't want to do it, but they are also limited when it comes to funds. So that is some of the challenges we have been having. It's difficult for them to. But one thing I also realize is, I think we have also failed as institutions to educate the government on the importance of them spending or investing in space technology. Because if we look at all the government institutions around, they all spend money on data one way or the other. And at the end of the day, if you calculate the amount of money they are spending on data you realize that it will be better if the government should invest in this area so that they will be able to use the data they are producing. And this one, it will even help them to reduce the issue of duplication, because one company A will spend money to buy a particular data, and the company B doesn't also know that company A is buying that data, and they're also spending money on the same data. So if the government tries to look at it from that point of view, I think they will be able to realize the importance of them spending or investing in this area. So for now, I think we have failed in educating the government. That is what I can say. The academia has failed in educating the government to know the importance of them investing in space. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Antua. We'll discuss more on that when it comes to the roles of government, the roles of the academia, and how they can strengthen the interface. But for now, let me quickly call on Dr. Doreen Agaba for our opening remarks. Dr. Doreen Agaba is an electrical engineer and an alumna of the University of Cape Town. Areas of specialization include space science and astrophysics, which is quite interesting because astrophysics is a very difficult field. So when we see women in astrophysics, we tend to give them a lot of respect. She has done research in radar and remote sensing, space debris, CubeSat missions, and ionospheric physics. She currently heads the Aeronautics and Space Science Bureau under the Science, Technology and Innovation Secretariat in the Office of the President of the Republic of Uganda. Dr. Agaba, you have the floor, please.
Thank you, Etem. I believe I am audible. That is a kind introduction. It's always tricky how one should explain their journey. I head what you'd call the space program in development here in Uganda. We are working towards the space agency, so we do not yet have a space agency. We are in infant stages of learning. We have made an attempt at one cube satellite, and it has been a learning curve for the country. So we are in the process of developing the related frameworks, the regulatory infrastructure, regulatory environment, the institutional framework, and so we are really babies. I am privileged to be in this discussion because it means that I get to learn from the journeys of my fellow experts. We are also engaged in a number of capacity building and training projects. And we, in the latest project, have attempted to investigate a mechanism in which we don't necessarily send experts in the government sector for training, but rather focus on academia, people already in academia who are qualified, of course. And we are also investigating how successful it will be for them as they get the training to be training a mirror team on ground. This is because from past experiences of other African nations, we have seen and had the challenges. And so we are willing to investigate a different mode of training and see what the outputs will be. So concerning infrastructure, we have a functional ground station, and we have been looking for opportunities. I've contacted a number of colleagues even in this meeting to receive from more than one satellite. We do not want to get stuck on the main purpose for which the ground station was put in place, but would rather increase value for other African satellites. Before we build further state-of-the-art infrastructure, we are doing an audit, countrywide audit. And so these are the sort of findings that will help us come up with frameworks, a framework for infrastructure audit. So we are already putting one leg into the space industry, but we are very careful to know that whatever we do from this point onwards has to be guided by information that is in line with the government priorities, the needs on ground, the expertise that we have and the fields in which we are lacking. And so we are building those frameworks based on information, learning from other people's experiences, and hoping that we will be able to do a job that is suitable for the needs of Uganda. That is what I can say for now.
Thank you, Dr. Agaba. And while I still have you, I think recently a satellite was launched, that's the PearlSat-1, which was, if I'm not mistaken, a project by one of your citizens, also from Japan. How is your office, or how is the government leveraging on that initiative and trying to get the knowledge that was acquired from Japan to be diffused within your ecosystem?
Thank you. PearlSat-1 was part of a project called the BIRDS 5. 3 engineers were sent from the Ministry of Science and Technology to Japan. And upon deployment and launch, as with many CUBE satellites, there were a number of challenges. But on ground, for example, the coordination of geospatial data distribution, we have managed to come up with a framework that is yet to be implemented, in which geospatial data reaches the subsistence farmer on ground. We have a program called Parish Development Model here in Uganda, the parish being the smallest unit of administration. And we thought that for a long time, government entities and private agencies have been having access to geospatial data, but there has been no framework in which the actual subsistence farmer, who is the largest contributor to agriculture, which is the backbone of our economy here in Uganda, it has not been clear, the framework on how they actually benefit and provide feedback for their need. So one of the key outputs from this project is a framework that is yet to be implemented, through which geospatial data is coordinated from the space program to related government entities, all the way to the parish and to the subsistence farmer. So that is one of the key outputs. And of course, we had to put up on ground infrastructure to support the project. And that has been a plus because we are able to use it even for as a receiving node for other satellites. There were lessons from this project. A number of lessons, one of which is how we engage into discussions of these projects, how equipped our leaders are when they sit down on the table to discuss some of these investments. Do they have the correct information on liability, on risks? Is there going to be insurance because anything is possible? And so these have been lessons for us to make sure that as we develop our space policy, there will be provision for protocols that guide relevant officers that are engaged in discussing these investments to have the correct information on implications. What is the economic implication? What is the political implication? What are the risks? What liabilities are available? And how can we prepare for these and make sure that they're in the documentation? So that is a lesson that we learned. We also learned that the statement that CUBE satellites are a very good way to start is not in itself exactly 100% true. Every nation has to assess on where an appropriate starting point is. What would be a more accurate statement would be small satellites, because you can have small satellites that are not necessarily CUBE satellites. The environment in outer space now is a little bit harsh. So the lifetime of a CUBE satellite has even lowered to an imaginable number of months. And so this has lowered the value of what a nation can get out of a cube satellite. So because of that, we are reviewing. Yes, you have to find a project that whose economic value, whose input in terms of finances is not going to be overwhelming to the government or the parties involved. But still, it does not necessarily have to be a cube satellite. So that's something we are revising. The statement that cube satellites are a very good way for the entire continent to initiate space activities. During the training, we thought that perhaps the number of people being trained is the issue, but as you may know, it is not. You could send an exaggerated number of people to go for training, but if you have not thought through the process till the end of the whole ecosystem, then you stand at a disadvantage. The person offering you the service for specialized training will get their value because in this arrangement, both parties benefit. And that has to also be clear in the negotiations that I'm benefiting this and you're benefiting the other. And so we have learned that the discussion and the mapping out of the entire ecosystem, starting from the point at which you send these people to your tech transfer partner, and monitoring what they are doing while they are there. How do we do that continuous monitoring? Are we moving along with them in that journey? Or did we just hand them over and we don't know what sort of challenges they are facing, which can affect the confidence we have when they come back, you know? The doubt that you may have that did they really do it? Should we test and see? All sorts of doubt. So thinking through the point where you send them, how you monitor their training, and when they come back, preparing for what exactly they will be doing. And sometimes these projects are small. A cube satellite, the investment in a cube satellite project is small, and saying that you're going to set up all of the requisite infrastructure once they arrive, plus all the equipment needed, sometimes is not feasible. So that we have now engaged, we are starting to engage academia and the industry to see that the value for some of these specialized training projects, when we come back, even while the trainees are still there, we are already starting to monitor and see what can be done on ground. I think that is what I can respond to that question. I feel like I have taken a while on it. Thank you, Eten.
Thanks so much for that. So next, I'll call on Dr. Taiwo Tejumola. Let me just introduce him. Dr. Taiwo Tejumola is an assistant professor of space systems engineering at the prestigious International Space University, ISU, in Strasbourg, France. Prior to joining ISU, he was a research associate at Kyushu University of Technology in Japan, where he worked on the design, development, and operation of small satellites. He has held other research and academic roles in space systems engineering at the National Space Research and Development Agency and the Federal University of Technology, Akure, both in Nigeria. Taiwo has a Bachelor of Engineering degree in Electrical and Electronics Engineering from Ahmadu Bello University in Zaria, Nigeria, and an MSc and PhD in Space Systems Engineering, both from Kyushu University of Technology, Japan. Dr. Tejumola, you're welcome. Please, you have the floor, please.
Yeah, thank you very much, Tim, and good afternoon, everyone. It's really nice to join this call to discuss about progress and how to forge ahead in the, small satellite regime. This is something that every part of the world, not just Africa, people are embracing. And I think the point is because this is the cost of the investment we put into this satellite is in terms of scale, it's smaller compared to the conventional satellites. And yes, I mean, people have talked about risk. Risk is also a factor, but how we accept this risk is also an important point. And also in terms of the duration, development time is also shorter compared to conventional satellite. So I think, yeah, you already mentioned everything about myself. And I just want to say that, so I'm in France. I work at the International Space University, and I make sure I keep myself abreast of what is going on back at home in Africa. I mean, I feel I'm from Nigeria, but I think I'm becoming more and more well connected in the Africa ecosystem, space ecosystem, and I think I'm very happy about that. So I think what I have seen from being a student in Japan, worked on satellite projects that were, I mean, the projects was counter kind of a partnership. I think that's the project Dr. Anita talked about, and also Dr. Agaba. I'm aware of the BETS 5. I was part of the BETS 1 project. I was the project manager. And I think what I have seen over time is that we want to be involved. We want to launch satellites. We want to put our name on the map. This is very important. I mean, this seems like very political to me. And I mean, it really sounds like what happened in the 60s when US and USSR, there was, I mean, people were trying to, these countries were trying to say, I did it first, I launched this size of satellite first, and all of that. I think for Africa, we should not go that path. We should go the path of really understanding what satellite can do for us. And interestingly, not all the time, satellite is not usually the solution for all of the problem. Because, for example, if you want to measure methane pollution on Earth, so satellites will not give you the best resolution. But of course, satellites give you a very wide coverage. You can see the area that are really affected by this pollution. But one important thing about venturing into satellite technology and satellite development is it expands to all of the other sectors. So, and I think it's also an important point because we are talking about spin-offs and spin-in. So we can look at it in the sense that so many people ask me, how can I start to build satellites? So I asked, which course did you do in university? Electrical engineering. I say, yeah, you can build satellites. You can be part of satellite projects because building satellites is really multidisciplinary. It's all the disciplines coming together to build satellite. So I think also countries in Africa, in other developing countries, need to look at it in this aspect, in the sense that satellite is not the end, it's just a means to an end. And also, it's also very important for us to look at investment in space program as not just a one-off thing that, oh, we build a satellite, we put the money, so next year we rest. No, it should be the same way we contribute to, say, agriculture, the same way we contribute to defense, the same way we contribute to education. I think really satellite should be a part of the national planning and national, infrastructure development for African country. I think, yes, this is very important. And also, I think, yes, small satellite is good, but small satellite cannot actually achieve most fantastic results that many African countries need. And also because most African countries were located in the tropics, so there are a lot of upper ionosphere problem like cloud and all of that. So it's very challenging to have a payload like a camera that is able to, really do this kind of mission to give us good results. So small satellite is good, but we should have a very long plan, a like 15 years plan. This is very important kind of strategy on how we want to leverage on the small satellite that we have developed. Small satellites, I can tell you that more than 60% of the CubeSat that have been launched never work. It's okay for university. For university, it's okay because for university, you publish paper. The non-operability of the satellite is a good paper for research because you talk about the risk, you talk about the problem that could have happened so that other people can consider this in their design. But for country, it is a no, I think. So for countries, usually it is still back to the point of failure is not an option, because if you fail, you have to explain to the taxpayer because the taxpayer money is going to this. So we should see small satellite as a mean to an end, but not really the end. So let's continue to do that. And I think it's also very important to have a kind of a coordinating institution that organize and plan everything we do in space technology. So for countries, I think I know the All Nation University, you are doing something amazing, but it's very important to coordinate on the national level to make sure everything we are doing is well harmonized, and we can really have this. It's called cooperative competitive advantage that, like in Ghana, this is what we focus on, and we can really bring tangible results. And maybe in Nigeria, this is what we want to do. And I mean, then overall in Africa, we'll be able to do something amazing. And that is what it's happening in Europe. Europe is coordinated. I mean, every country have their national space agencies, but they have the regional space agency, which is European Space Agency. And ESA understand that each country have the best area where they can, contribute and their capability, and they use that to push the space program of the country, which eventually spin off to the regional space program. So yeah, I think I will yield the mic here, but I'm very happy to take questions, especially as it relates to capacity development. So I have worked with the Nigerian Space Agency for almost 10 years. And yes, I was in Japan for 5 years. And now I'm teaching people to be space experts. So I'm really very happy to answer questions that relates to that. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Tejimola, and thanks very much for the points which you've highlighted. I mean, there are so many, so I noted them down, but I don't start going through them one after the other. But just maybe if I may quickly ask you a question. So like you mentioned, when you were introducing yourself, you were in Kyushu for some time. You were part of the BETS, in fact, the very first set of BETS One, the BETS One project, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, that's
and
correct.
You were even the manager at some point. Yeah.
Yes.
So from where you're sitting, I mean, you have a bird's eye view, also, if I may use that word too, and the systems perspective on how things are, both from where you are, even right now in ISU in France. But let's talk about Japan first, the Kyushu program. And like you mentioned, Uganda, Zimbabwe, several countries in Africa have some of the young people, these students, have gone to Japan for training.
Yes.
So first of all, let me ask, in the real sense of it, has there been knowledge, technology transfer, and even knowledge transfer? Yeah, or maybe you can say knowledge transfer because they got their degrees. But has there been technology transfer in the real sense within this BEDS project?
Yes, I will say yes, but I mean, you can take me up on that. You can say I'm biased, but yes, I think yes, because Kyushu Institute of Technology is the #1 university in terms of small satellite development in the world, not in Japan, in the world. They have the highest number of small satellites, and they have all infrastructure, all except radiation facility. So the only test you don't do or you are not exposed to at QTech is handling radiation facility. Vibration testing, thermal vacuum testing, everything, shock test, everything, they have it. So studying at QTech as a student, and I remember vividly, there is a course, small satellite testing. It's 4 credit units. So you have to really do it, and you have to write a report. And you do it with satellite from vendors. So always some companies bring satellites. So that's working on that satellite, different sizes from different vendors, is actually part of your training. So I remember I worked on Canon satellites during my PhD as part of that course. So it's very important. And I think also, so in terms of technical know-how, I think yes, students who go to QTech, when they come out, they are sound. Yeah. So, but I think one point I would like to say, and also I mentioned that to my professor many times, is, engineers want to build satellites that they like. But in real life, you should build satellites that people want. This is a very important point. And when you want to build satellite that people want, you need to not only understand the engineering, you have to understand the political, geopolitics, the business, and everything that involves that are part of that. So, but in terms of technical know-how transfer, I think it's like Dr. Agaba said, it's a kind of counterpart funding. So you sign, QTech sign, then QTech make sure, I think, they are able to tick all the boxes. But for the counterpart in Africa, it's also important to, as you are building satellites, the end goal is not on the day the satellite will be deployed that you make press release and you score some political points. The important part of that is building infrastructure, building capacity on ground, so that when these young people return, they will be able to get their hands dirty. They will be able to work. They will be able to do what they need to do. Yeah. So I think it's, maybe from QTech side, there are, because it's a technical university, and you can imagine if you go to technical university in Japan, you are in the lab 24/7. Even on New Year Day, you are in the lab. On Christmas Day, you are in the lab. You can ask every other student. So, and we do it with joy because we get results. It's very, very, rewarding for the students. But after 2 years of masters at QTech, if you return back home, if you are not able to do something similar, I think it's very, it's a big problem for the students. And like Dr. Anita said, there are not so many countries in Africa doing space, even companies, and we know the geopolitics in space. Maybe I cannot work as an engineer in the Egyptian Space Agency, for example. It's normal. An Egyptian also, when Nigeria will not employ, because space is, it's very cool to talk about it, but there are a lot of military links, space and military. So that's okay. So when people return, I think it's important to be able to do something that relates to what they have learned at QTech. But in terms of people going to QTech to study, I think they are able to really learn everything from thinking about satellites to designing the mission, thinking about requirements, diffusing these requirements into different components as a function, and making sure these components fit together to become subsystem, and making sure all the subsystems fit together to become a system, and how the operation of this system is linked to everything you learn. So yeah.
Thank you.
Answer your question.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Tejimola. And one of the discussions I want us to have is how we can, when students come back from Kyushu, how we can leverage on that knowledge, diffuse it so that others can actually learn from, since not everybody can go to Kyushu or abroad to study, how we can diffuse that knowledge. And then like how, what Dr. Gaba mentioned, how we can, in terms of specialization, how we can leverage on all these pockets of capabilities around the continent in the different countries so that we can push or advance the satellite ecosystem in Africa as a whole. But we'll discuss more on that. Let me just give the floor to Mr. Charles Nwangi to make some comments. Charles Nwangi is the acting director for Space Sector and Technology Development at the Kenyan Space Agency. He's overseeing Earth observation, research, education, and outreach programs, as well as the research grant program at the Kenya Space Agency. Mr. Nwangi was part of the team that participated in the development of Kenya's space object, which was called First Kenyan University Nanosatellite Precursor Flight, 1CONS-PF, that's the abbreviation, which was launched from the International Space Station, ISS. Mr. Nwangi has a master's degree in electrical engineering from Jomo Kenyatta University of Agriculture, an international master's degree on space mission design and management from Sapienza University of Rome, Italy. He has also undertaken a postgraduate course in GIS and remote sensing from ITC, University of Twente in Netherlands, amongst other diverse training on project management, satellite engineering, and remote sensing. Mr. Nwangi, you have the floor, please.
Thank you, Tim, and again for the kind introduction. And I hope you can hear me.
Yes, very well.
I will try to maximize on the time that you've given me or you're extending me, and try and avoid repeating what my colleagues have already shared, which has been quite informative. So I'll just give a brief overview of our journey in Kenya on matters related to space, and maybe just go back to a few years, the early 2010, I think it was around 2012 when there was a discussion on the African resource management constellation between Kenya, Nigeria, Algeria, and South Africa, which was seeking to develop a constellation of satellites. So I would say much of the discussion on satellite development for us began during those conversations. And each of the countries was expected to send or make a contribution of a satellite that would form a constellation. That somewhat did not come to fruition in its totality. A few countries were able to do that. But over time, because again of different reasons, that didn't come to the fore. And I believe that could still be one of the key outcomes or results that we could easily hope for the region. Fast forward to 2018, like you mentioned, we launched one new nanosatellite, again, technology demonstration that was developed between then the University of Nairobi and the University of Rome, and launched in 2018, and then that debuted in 2020. And then from that, then we started, one of the elements we were trying to address then was the need for capacity building. And then once we had that engagement, we felt there was need to do a bit more. And we introduced what we were calling then the research grant for Kenyan universities, which was approximately, I think it's about 50,000 USD, so which we gave to 5 universities in 2020 to develop a one new nanosatellite. And we went through that process, and then the best 4, initially we had targeted the best 3, but we ended up having a tie on the third one. So we had the best 4 universities, then we transitioned them to the development of a 3 nanosatellite, and that is ongoing. So that is something that is working, that is still currently ongoing. It's taken a bit much longer because, again, also some, again, reasons in terms of because you're coordinating for universities, again, some of the other challenges we have in public institutions, the procurement, lengthy procurement procedures. Then fast forward again, we have had discussions, and maybe some of the colleagues here would also allude to that, and I see Engineer Dr. Anita, as well as Dr. Agaba, and also Dr. Eman. We have a collaborative project on the African Development Satellite, where we're working together to develop 6U. It's a collaboration between 6 countries within the Africa, which is a very good way of also working together. And then also between Uganda and Egypt, we were awarded an opportunity to develop a climate camera that will be hosted at the International Space Station. And I believe Dr. Ayman would share more details about that. But I wanted to, having all that shows there is, and again, also when you look across Africa, there's a lot of efforts, and my colleagues have also shared what they're doing within the region. But my takeaway would be there is need for us to work more as a region. And Dr. Tai, who is also known to be, has alluded to that, the scenario where if you're Nigerian, you wouldn't work in Egypt, and the other way around, and that applies across. But how do we leverage on the pocket of technology or the technical capacity that is existing within the region to build our capacity to develop solutions that are able to be scaled? How, again, do we leverage, say, for example, most of the members panel have spacecraft that have been launched by their countries, but there has not been any deliberate, or maybe there's not the visible deliberate effort to ensure that we share what has been shared across, what has been launched by the other African countries. So if you look at, say, for example, the Sentinel program, where Europe shares the data across of course it is global, but majorly also to their countries, until when we realize that we could do more by scaling up little pockets of technology that we have. That is when we still start moving as a region. And I want to edit there so that I allow you to maybe share any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Charles. And I think I have a question from your very last comment, which has to do with intra-African cooperation. And the question would be, do you see international cooperation as an inhibiting factor in intra-African cooperation. So we have a lot of cooperation with Japan. Some countries are cooperating with Russia. Some are cooperating with the UK. Some, like Kenya, has a lot of cooperation with Italy. So all these external collaborative efforts, is it an inhibiting factor to Africa cooperating and leaning on one another, learning from one another?
So I would say it is not. Depends on how the different segments do take it. But I see this as an opportunity as opposed to an impediment. Because the reason why we engage in those arrangements is to build capacity. Not unless we are saying that that capacity is not being developed and we have to keep on relying on the other international vendor or international member of the arrangement. If that is the case, then it means that there's not technology transfer, and what we're looking for is solutions which are being procured. So I'll say what we need to do is understand why we are doing what we're doing. Because if it is ourselves, we're working with with the Italian government, we're building capacity. That capacity is not Italian in nature. It is either in satellite development or it is in application or whatever element it is. But once, and that is what, again, I was making reference to the comment that I made. The person that we train here should have more of a regional access to the market, whether it is capacity building or offering that service. And I'm not saying that is already there. Maybe that is something that we need to think around also as people who are within the sector, especially those who are in government, to see how can we enable that movement of that limited technical resource that is available. So that now, again, countries have different arrangements. But if we are tactful, then we could easily leverage on those capabilities to be able to bring those institutions together. And then, of course, leverage on the capabilities that have been built.
Thank you, Charles. But a related question, and that has to do with the issue of technology transfer. So when we cooperate with foreign companies or companies or even countries, organizations, they are usually, there's an agreement, there's an MOU signed, and there are usually restrictions or some controls on what you can pass on to some other person, some other entities, or some other countries. So if on one hand we are trying to encourage African cooperation or Pan-Africanism, how do you balance that with your responsibility to the agreement that you signed?
Yeah, again, sometimes, and most of the times, those are details that will develop in non-disclosure agreements, the NDAs that most of us sign. But majorly it is in terms of the technology that is specific to that system. It does not prohibit you if I know the process of developing the satellite. That is, I don't think it is patented. That process is available. It's only that now, say, for example, if you're integrating a particular device onto another system, that is what would be limited for onward transmission. But in terms of the process, and that is potentially what we should be looking forward, that is not inhibited. But also one of the things that we also need to be very careful about also as a region is we should also look at those agreements and see, do they serve the function that they're supposed to? Because if you're building capacity for us to be able to advance as a region or as a country, then we should also make sure that we have put mechanisms in place to ensure that the locking down of information and knowledge in those agreements does not happen. Because again, if you're saying we're building capacity, if you're building capacity and locking it in a cupboard or in those agreements, then what value would that accrue to us? So I would look at it in two ways. We look at it before, and then also ensure that, again, whatever can be shared across is shared. I would give the example of Taiwo. He was trained in Japan. Currently, he's offering his services in France, but still it is the same skill set that is being offered and that opportunity. And I see he's smiling. I don't know whether maybe he can share whether he was having any challenges sharing or teaching within the ISU, because again, he's a beneficiary of that.
Okay. Taiwo, do you want to respond to that?
Yeah, I mean, it's still, yeah, thank you for, putting me on the spotlight. Yeah, I mean, always when I am attending some African meeting, I'm always on, I get asked this kind of question, but I think it's, it's about people's wish, I think. And also, it's also about, when you are back, are you able to really do what you want to do? So when I was in Japan, my research, so I wrote my thesis on plasma instrumentation. So to, using Langmuir probe. So this is kind of space physics, kind of plasma combined with electronics. So I built a plasma instrument, which is just a rod that was part of a payload for a satellite. And I really did a lot of work on that. So if I go back to Nigeria, we don't have a vacuum chamber. So, I mean, I'm not saying that you should not go back. It's very important. In fact, now I'm trying to build a kind of network of engineers, space engineers in Africa, and want to see how we can, like your point, leverage and connect. Because I don't want it to be very sad if what is happening in Africa in terms of aeronautics. So if I want to travel to Togo, for example, I have to come to Paris first, then go to Togo. Togo is just a few kilometers from my city in Lagos, in Nigeria. It's same everywhere in Africa. So it's a kind of some, system that doesn't favor us. So I think for space engineering, which is actually my field, I think for remote sensing, I think we are doing amazing things. We have different regional bodies and different kind of African networks that people are able to meet together and discuss progress. But it's not the same for space engineers. So if people are trained and they return home, if they don't get anything to do and they are not able to meet with people of like minds, I think it's a bit frustrating. So I think, it's a good point, and we need to keep doing what we do, to push the things forward. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Taiwo, for your response. And I'm going to call on Ayman now, but before then, just to make a comment on your last, maybe not a comment, but maybe to challenge us. The last point Taiwo made was about a meeting point for those in satellite engineering. So we don't have that in Africa. We have several programs on remote sensing, on Earth observation. We even have organizations like the ASI. You have for space physics, you have for which other one? Astronomy. But I'm not aware of anything for satellite engineering. So I don't know if that's a challenge for us here to think of maybe a symposium, a conference, or something where for a meeting point where we can share.
And I mean, this kind of meeting is just going to be everybody from electrical engineering, physics, chemistry. If you love space, and you want to build something, so it's, we need to do this in Africa.
Okay. All right. Thanks very much. And that's a valid point. So I'll call on Dr. Heyman Ahmed to make some comments also. Dr. Heyman Ahmed is the head of the Space Imaging Division at the Egyptian Space Agency. He's a member of the board of directors of the Egyptian Space Agency and also a member of the Egyptian National Space Council. He was a member of the African Union Space Working Group, which developed the African Space Policy and Strategy. Heyman has a master's degree in business administration and PhD in satellite Earth observation systems. He has coordinated several space projects at national and international levels and has a patent on improving the performance of electronic systems in the space environment. Dr. Ahmed, you have the floor, please. Thank you.
Hello, good evening, everyone. Thank you, Ethan, for the introduction. Just to be sure you hear me well now. Okay.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. So I have a pleasure to meet all the speakers today and I'm really happy to have them today with me in this panel discussion. Okay, to start my talk, I would like to see that our team in the Egyptian Space Agency have been started its journey maybe 2007 during our training, hands-on training for the first Egyptian satellite, EgyptSat-1. It was done in Ukraine. Since then, our team started to build its capacity by hands-on projects. We started our first project in 2013, and we developed our first computer for the satellite. After this, we continued small projects to develop small subsystems for satellites. Then in 2017, we started to gather our products and our subsystems to demonstrate in a flight mission, which was our first two Cube satellites, NARSCube-1 and NARSCube-2, which have been launched in 2019. During our journey, we have been gone through a lot of challenges, technical, administrative challenges, financial challenges, political challenges. And I can summarize our experience in few points to be addressed during our journey. First one is the sustainability. Sustainability is very critical issue, because once you have done a specific project in space, this project is successful and it provides you with some sort of outputs and outcomes and human resources. So you can build infrastructure during this project. You can build your capacity and your team's capacity during this project as well. But you have to guarantee the sustainability of this human resource, sustainability of activity, sustainability of financial resources, the infrastructure as well. So sustainability is one of the critical values and the critical issues to be addressed by any team is going to achieve something in the space field. We have also to differentiate between two main streams. The first one is the upstream and the second one is the downstream. The downstream, actually, I think in Africa, there is a lot of Earth observation application that is related to the downstream, which is very easy to acquire from any commercial company. You can acquire this product and you can learn and to develop skills in software programming to work with Earth observation mapping and GIS. But the upstream, which is the developing space technology, satellite systems, and to launch into space and to allow your team to operate this satellite as well, is a challenging part, because this part requires you a lot of time, a lot of financial resource. So if you are going to speak about space technology in a smaller level, it can achieve 1 or 2 times success, but it will lose sustainability. So I think that the government and entities should play a good role in providing a sustainable platform for space activity in the national level. Another thing I think here is to focus on is the role of the African Space Agency, which is a potential agency. Its role is to provide support for the African countries in the framework of space technology development, and to secure a sustainable, maybe we can say sustainable financial resources, funds to provide startups, to provide national space agencies with the required know-how, with the required infrastructure to enable intra-continental collaboration between the African countries. Also, according to our experience, if you would like to acquire the knowledge, you have to build your knowledge by yourself. You can start with some partner, but this partner will provide you with some sort of knowledge which will not have sufficient background to enable you to make a future missions by yourself. So I think the one important issue here is to rely on hands-on training. The hands-on training provides you a part of the theoretical one. You can get a theoretical certificate from the internet, from the training courses, but you have to practice. So the practice to develop a real project is a very important one. We have practice hands-on project to do capacity building for our team. As I said, during our first space project, which have been held in Ukraine. That's why the hands-on is one that enables you to practice and to sustain the space activity. That's why I think the sustainability, the infrastructure, the capacity building is a whole ecosystem for the space. So you can't rely on one pillar and ignore the other. If you have sustainability without good infrastructure and good capacity, you will not be able to sustain. If you have the good capacity, but you are lacking the sustainability, you will not sustain forever. That's why the ecosystem for the space is very important to consider as a whole system, not individual pillars. And I think the support of the African Space Agency would be an essential part in this field to allow more advances in sustaining the ecosystem in the national and the international level as well. So both of them should be complementary to each other, and both of them also should be the main target and the main objectives of the African Space Agency.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Ahmed. And interestingly, I guess you're done. Sorry.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Thank you. And like you pointed or you hinted at, Egypt is hosting the African Space Agency, and I think it's kind of operational now. I think in January you handed over the facility to the African Union, so it's left for the African Union to begin to recruit and do other things that are necessary to get the place running. Yeah, just before I ask you a question on that, just to invite our participants that if you have any comments or questions, you can put it in the chat box. Or if you want to speak, you can just raise your hand and I can give you the opportunity to speak also. So, Heyman, let's talk a bit about the African Space Agency. And I want you to speak from either from your professional point of view or from your national point of view. And the question really is, how can we, and when I say we now, I mean we, all of us as a collective, as Africans, how can we position and leverage on the African Space Agency so that everybody, every country, every African gets to benefit from the agency, and we can all, we can build these indigenous technologies and solutions that we are actually talking about?
Okay, thank you for the question, Ethem. I think from our point of view, we see the African Space Agency should be based on a building blocks from different countries. So we during my participation in the working group for developing the African space policy and the African space strategies, we have met a lot of representatives from different African countries that are willing to make use of space technology and applications. So I think the integration and the collaboration between the African countries is the key solution in here for achieving the objectives. So the African space policy, for example, has four main pillars for Earth observation, for satellite communication, satellite navigation, and space science. So all of them are be complementary to each other to acquire a complete and coherent space system. The African Space Agency will rely on the capabilities of the African space agencies in individual countries to integrate together. That's why when we thought how we can support the African Space Agency to be an active and very collaborative platform for different countries, we sought to make the initiative which is called the African Development Satellite. The African Development Satellite, as you may all know, is a collaborative project that integrates many different modules of the satellite from different countries, so that each country can contribute with its own knowledge to this specific part of the satellite, so that the integration itself is a demo for how, for example, 6 African countries can be collaboratively integrate together to achieve one successful space mission. I think this was a demo introduced and initiated by Egypt, and have been also most of the speakers today with us are part of this project and this initiative. And we think that this model can provide a very sustainable platform, or if the African Space Agency will adopt this kind of models to achieve the overall objective of the Africa in space. I think also one of the main objectives is the diaspora for the African Space Agency, because of course the brain drain is one of the challenges that Africa is facing today. So you have a lot of brain drain outside Africa. So the African Space Agency also should maintain a sustainable activities for the brilliant drains in Africa to achieve these goals, and also to provide a good environment. For example, like Dr. Tiao said, that, for example, when he returned from Japan, he couldn't find a chamber in his own country to do the research. So I think this lack of infrastructure and lack of gaps that can be existing in different countries in Africa can be fulfilled in a short term and maybe medium term by the African Space Agency.
Yeah, thank you, Heyman. And let me invite other panelists to also contribute to that. How do we position the African Space Agency to be effective and to deliver on the mandate? Any of the panelists?
Okay, if I may, yes, I think the African Space Agency is a very good platform for Africa to harmonize what we do and how we want to move forward. So, and like Dr. Heyman said, space is something that we have to do. So it's not like economics or political science that we analyze situation, we get some data from the field and all of that. So for space, we really have to do it. We have to build system. So if you have been trained as a system engineer, you should build the system. That's how you can incorporate the learning and, build it further. But if you don't build the system, you cannot. If you are a GIS expert, if you have not used computer to digitize, to do all this data analysis, you cannot move ahead. So it's important to have African Space Agency, which we already have. But I think also this African Space Agency should not just be a bureaucratic public service office. It should be an institution that is really doing something. And how it can do something is to leverage on this kind of project that is already, you know, in the conceptualization stage. Bring experts from different African countries together to work on the project. And bringing experts, I mean, people who can really do the work, not people who have been nominated by their government, which is common. And I mean, sometimes you go to meetings, you see directors who does not even know, they don't know Ohm's law, I'm sorry to say, and they want to join engineering project. How? So I think we should really allow the young people who have this skill to be part of this project to really do what we push Africa forward. That's my point.
Yeah, thank you, Taiwo. Maybe I will invite Anita if you want to contribute to this. And one of the things you know, like the African Space Agency, Heyman, you correct me, the different national agencies and perhaps other institutions are supposed to contribute to the African Space Agency. So what happens within the country could give you an idea of what may happen within the agency. So Anita, you may want to contribute to how we can position the African Space Agency, but I also wanted to shed some light on how your organization in the university is working with your national body, because somehow this is going to have a reflection on the African Space Agency also. Anita.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for that question. When it comes to leveraging the space agency, what I can say is, in terms of resources.
Sorry, your sound is not clear from here.
Okay, please can you hear me? Hello, please can you hear me?
Yeah, it's better now, yes.
Okay, good. I'm talking about, in terms of leveraging the African Space Agency, what I can say is, I will talk in terms of resources. You know, most countries in Africa, some countries have the resources, some other countries, they don't have the resources. So if the African Space Agency can put together those countries who have the resources, so that those resources will be easily accessed by other countries who don't have the resources, but they are ready to build a capacity. In that case, I think we'll stand a better chance because we have an ecosystem whereby we are able to share resources among ourselves. And it is going to help speed up the training and to also help boost the space system, the space community in terms of the upstream. And also the second question was about we cooperating or we integrating with the local or the government. So we, as a university, we have been trying our best. So we are in contact with them. And even in drafting the Ghana space policy, our university was involved because they invited us to join in this. I think so for we collaborating to work together, we are doing our best because we are involved in most of the activities that's going on in the country.
Okay, thank you. And Doreen, I think I want to invite you to the discussion, and especially because you are doing quite a lot of partnerships both within Africa and even outside Africa. So can you give us a sense of how you are initiating and implementing these partnerships so that maybe we all can learn how to leverage on partnerships within our own national ecosystems?
Thank you, Etim. I would like to, it's raining here in case you hear some background noise. I'd like to briefly add on how to leverage the African Space Agency before going to the ecosystem. In the framework, the implementation framework for the African Space Agency, there should be provision not just for government-to-government corporations, but also for the private sector and the industry within independent states. I would also like to advocate for a platform to market African products, both hardware and software. The tendency is that even when we have a solution on the continent, we are still going away from the continent because there isn't that sort of marketing. The big base of consumerism happening on our continent can be reduced if the people who have the capacity, countries that have functioning telecommunication satellites, can at least try to get a chunk of the consumers on the continent. So there's a need to market what we have on the continent amongst ourselves, to set up platforms for sharing, not just infrastructure or ground stations, but also data. So there's a need to put that information amongst ourselves. Then we will develop the confidence that we actually have some of these capabilities on the continent, and we will be able to critique each other, because if I have come to the Egyptian Space Agency and spent there a number of months, then I'm able to have a reasonable discussion with, for example, Ahmed, on my observations and the lessons that I'm taking from there. Our lessons with the corporations we have so far, both within the continent and abroad. I mentioned this in my previous engagement, is that there's a need to enforce a targeted awareness campaign. So for example, if the particular body, government or private, that is engaged in some of these discussions is not well equipped, then there is a need to be taken advantage of. So targeted awareness, I'm not talking about the broader spectrum of awareness campaigns where we go in schools and we go to larger sectors, but providing guidelines and information to the people that we know will be sitting down and discussing these investment opportunities. I also mentioned this previously, that there's a need for actually drafted guiding principles. And you notice that some of these countries have done this before. I think the US and Japan have these protocols in terms of export-import concerning the space industry. And in these protocols, they will make sure that they are protected, their interests are protected. So if their objective is to become the leading nation in one of the aspects, they will maybe put stringent measures on importing that particular technology until they've developed it. So we have to start having that level of thinking and having actual protocols that have to be followed in assessing these partnerships that we have. Just to finish, I found a quote that was interesting. This was written by an officer from somewhere in America. I'm not sure whether they are representing a private company. But the quote reads, if the United States is to maintain space superiority, it will need to make substantive cultural, doctrinal, and operational changes to its multidimensional relationship with the commercial space industry. This is interesting because we usually do not think about space in terms of cultural dimensions, doctrinal dimensions, political implications, and we have to start putting all of these factors in place. We have noticed a shift in the changes of how some of these giants in the industry have moved. So they faced a challenge maybe in their finances, and then they decided to move and equip their private sector. Why? They knew that if they don't equip the private sector, it will have a very big effect on their activities. So we have to start seeing these effects from a long-term effect. What are our desires as nations? What is the overarching desire as a continent? What do we want to be lead in what is our main objective, short-term, medium, and long-term, and these are available, but they have to be brought down to the actual officers that are negotiating these, because we are talking about a collective effect on the continent. But this collective effect, as Ahmed said, is from individual nations. So all the decisions that we make from individual nations concerning space partnerships, both within the continent and abroad, come back to affect our collective capabilities in terms of technology, in terms of production, in terms of industry and related products. So that is what I would say, that having frameworks that are and protocols that are clearly guiding the appropriate entities and officers that are involved in these partnership discussions, and making sure that our interests, cultural, political, economic, and otherwise, are ably represented. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Doreen. And I really I like your comment about having a platform to market African products. And I just remember that there's Nigeria is planning what they call the Africa Space Economy Conference and Exhibition. It's supposed to come up in October from 16th to 20th. And I think there is a lot of interest. I think there is even the support from the US government, because I think this was discussed in December last year during the US Africa Space Summit. So I think that may be one of the platforms. Well, maybe I don't know whether it will be a regular event, but I know they are planning this event October this year. So I think, like you said, we need to have platforms like this where we market our products and services at Africa. Many African developments, whether it's subsystems or systems, oftentimes they're exported to Europe, Middle East, Asia, and things like that. Oftentimes, African governments don't even patronize the nascent space industry that we have, and that's a challenge for the industry. We have a question and a comment from one of the participants, and he says, I have the impression that the existing satellites belonging to partners like EU, Japan, Australia, US already provide a large amount of exploitable data for Africa's current needs in Earth observation and telecommunications. And then he's asking, is there really a need to develop and launch new satellites in Africa at this time? Shouldn't we concentrate our efforts and resources on the analysis of current data? And once we notice that we are missing some data, we can then think about launching other satellites. So let me hear from the panelists. Taiwo, I see your hand up.
Yes, thank you very much. I think it's a very good question, and this is, points that people raise every time. Why should Africa launch satellites? Why should South America launch satellites? Or why should Southeast Asia launch satellites? Because these countries are perceived to be poor, and there are data. But one point, telecommunication data are not free. You have to pay. They are not cheap. So you need to use data or something, you have to pay. It's not free. So Earth observation, yes. But those data, so when you build satellites, you incorporate needs and requirements of users. But of course, some of these Earth observation data from Copernicus and all of that, and Landsat, they fit our needs. But because our requirements, what we need, the kind of cloud cover, the kind of, all of these points were not taken into consideration when these satellites were developed. So those data, they don't perfectly fit our needs. And one other point is that when you build satellites, it's not about just the satellite that goes to space. There are a lot of spin-off. You train people, you build ground station, and these are so many peoples. There are so many citizenry citizens that will have, be trained. And these skills are very useful in other fields. That's one point. So telecommunication data are not free. You have to pay. And for Earth observation, yes, there are so many data, but also because satellite data and all of that is linked to security. So how do we want to think here about security in Africa for African countries? So if you always depend on, somebody to supply you data, so they supply you what, so when they supply you, they ask you, what do you want to use it for? Or this kind of information. So it means we don't have, sovereignty of, our region and our country. And I think this is important also to put into consideration. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Taiwo. Is there another panelist that want to contribute to that?
Yes, can I add something here?
Yeah.
As I was saying that the space as an ecosystem, it's have two different components, the upstream and the downstream. So if you are going to rely on one component, you are going to miss the other. Means if you never understand how the satellite is built and how the satellite is working and how to make your own satellite, you will never understand how to use the downstream. I understand that a lot of African engineers and specialists can take, for example, some training courses to receive and to process a data which is coming from the satellite, and how you can apply this to your own country. But to a certain limit, you will not be able to understand the physical phenomenon that generated this kind of data. It means you are going to be forever an end user. It means you are going forever to buy the data and to apply a software. You are going also to buy it. It means you are buying a software and buying a data, input the data into the software and make the result. You will never understand the physics behind this. You will not be forever all components will be not in your hands. It means you will not be able to develop or to enhance something. If you would like to make something different, you will go and ask the supplier to do this for you. It means you will be contained into a specific limit, which will also put you in a specific frame that never allow you to enhance your capabilities, neither in now or in the future. If you are going to speak about using the data, yes, I agree that for now we have to use the data. We don't have to stop using the data, but we can make parallel tracks. We start using the data and we start building our satellites for our future missions. Thank you.
Thank you, Heyman. Doreen, you want to say something?
Just briefly, my fellow panelists have addressed this matter. I would like to add that most of the available data, if it is raw, then or relatively raw, then it will be very costly to serve your purpose because you need it more than once. But if it is pre-processed or post-processed, whichever is suitable, then we already have a challenge in the remote sensing community of the tools that are already being used to process that data. They don't fit in our setup. I can speak about Uganda, for example. The way we do agriculture is not the monochromatic way that some of these countries do their agriculture, where they have hundreds and hundreds of acres of corn or something. And so some of that post-processed data is giving us a glimpse of what we want to see, but not really to the depth for which we want. So we are already having challenges with the approach that is being presented here, that just use the available data. Over and above what my fellow panelists have said, we have to even go back and evolve suitable tools for our setup, software that is going to address the matters that we want in terms of Earth observation. So over and above the challenges being expressed in terms of sovereignty, security, codependence, we still have to go down and make sure that we have products that are suitable for our respective problems. Thank you.
And that will cost you some more money, since you have to go back and you have to pay for the software, you have to pay for training. And so at the end of the day, you're even paying a lot more than even you bargained for. Yeah, Anita, you have the floor, please. Anita, I see your hand up. We can't hear you. Oh, are you muted? Hello, Anita. I don't seem to hear her. I don't know whether she can hear me. But maybe I ask another question. So I'll still invite the participants. If you have any question or comment, you can drop it in the chat box. Or if you want to speak, you can let me know. We've talked quite a lot about capacity building and international cooperation, but I want to reframe it a bit, and that is how the people that we've trained, either in Africa or outside Africa, what can we do to get them engaged after their training program? What kind of programs can we engage them in, both at the national level and at the continental level, so that we don't lose the knowledge that they've acquired and we don't lose them to brain drain? Any of these panelists can respond.
Okay, I can.
Yeah, you can go ahead, Hema.
Okay, so I think the acquiring the knowledge is very expensive at the first time, and once a country has started acquiring the knowledge in the space field, they should maintain the capacity they have acquired already. I think the model Uganda has adopted recently, which Doran speak about, is to invest in the academics, because the academia usually is the base of the knowledge in a country. So if you are going to invest in academia, it means that the academics is going to transfer this knowledge into students, and the students represent the future of the country. So the nation that's investing in its youth is going to have strong knowledge in the near future. The same here, we have adopted this also in the Egyptian Space Agency, I think 5 years ago, when we start to share our knowledge into university students through graduation projects. We have also transferred this through regular training session for the students each year for the graduation projects coming from engineering universities, so that, for example, each group that's graduating have to do a graduation project. We can adopt them, we can fund them and support them, for example, to do the onboard computer of the satellite, the communication system of the satellite, the structure of the satellite. So some modules of the satellite can be developed by the students. And this actually bring some of them to be a pioneer in this field. For example, we trained around 30 students for 1 year. We can acquire and we can hire from them 3 or 5 students in the agency. So each year the number was increasing. We have done this to our students. It was around 400 students that has been trained to different subsystems of the satellite. So this is why how you should invest more in the students, and also you can build the capacity in the academia to guarantee the sustainable knowledge transfer between a generation to other generation. Thank you.
Thank you, Emma. Thanks for pointing out the strong collaboration, the strong relationship between the National Space Agency and the universities. Doreen, you have the floor.
Just briefly to add to what Ahmed has said, the discussion on continuity and sustainability of the training has to start even before the trainees leave. So it is not just a matter of nominating people, maybe you carry out interviews and then they just go. And then when they come back, you tell them, oh, we require you to do A, B, C, D, E. So the discussion and formulating that idea for continuity has to be an engagement between the funding institution and the experts that are going for the training. And that framework should already be established even as they go, so that there is a plan at hand on, okay, so we are going, what is the purpose of this training? And when we come back, where do we start from and what shall we do? It's not that simple. Of course, sometimes you may require a significant amount of finances, but it is a discussion that you have to begin with while you design the training program, that then at some stage you involve the people you've selected for the training. And as they train, you're busy even modifying that particular sustainability plan. And as they come back, you have already started preparing on what where they're going to start from and what they're going to do, and maybe setting up also another team on ground. That is what I would advise, as opposed to, you know, there's already a program that the people training have sent you a concept, and you're just relying on it, and you send people and say, okay, we'll figure it out once they come back or while they are there. They are not part of the process in that, and their expectations are not usually realistic. But if you have started the discussion with them before they go, then they know where you stand, they know where they're coming from, and they know what you can do by the time they come back. So they already have that, their mind tuned to where the little or big that they will start from when they come back. So I thought it was important to note that the people getting the expert training should be involved in this process of planning the sustainability model, not just some sort of placement that you just, when they come, you just place them into the project, but rather they are part of the process, and there you manage expectations. So that while they are there, they are not thinking that, oh, by the time they spend a few months, maybe 5 months to 1 year, then they will come back and find that your country has suddenly magically become a superpower in the space industry. You're working with them on this journey, and you'll continue even when they come back. But I thought it was important to say that. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Doreen. I think we've really touched on several aspects of this issue of small satellite development, and maybe satellite development as a whole. We pointed out, we can't just focus on small satellites, but we need to begin to look at the broad value chain as a whole. I'm seeing a comment here, and it says, I'm talking about leveraging on the African Space Agency. I think it's good to collaborate and work with both government and private institutions. And the agency should factor into their policy how to support in terms of funds to these institutions, mostly the private entities who are ready to commit their efforts to helping advance the space sector of Africa. So thanks for the contribution. And Heyman, I think because you're our eye in Egypt. But so very important for the African Space Agency to work with other bodies, organizations, institutions, and especially the private sector, so that we all benefit. So I want us to kind of close up in a few minutes. We've touched on policy drivers, we talked on challenges within the ecosystem, we've talked on technology transfer, trade restriction issues. We've talked a lot about capacity building, cooperation, intra-Africa and international cooperation, access to facilities. I think one of the things we are going to do at ASLI is to articulate these different contributions properly in form of a paper which we can make public and share with policymakers and decision makers, because these are very important contributions, and it's useful. It should go beyond just this program. Of course, this recording is going to be uploaded on our YouTube channel, so anybody can always watch it. But sometimes to just sit down and watch a 1 hour or 2 hour program may be a challenge for some people. But if you have a handheld document, it's easier to read. So we are going to articulate this, and of course, engage with the panelists for contribution so that we have a well-written public paper that we can make available to everybody. Before we leave, I'll just give all the panelists, I got some messages from some of the panelists. They have some other engagements, so that they have to leave. So if each panelist can just give maybe a final remark or a final thought, just in about a minute. Anybody who wants to start?
Okay, I go for it.
Thank you.
So, yeah, I think, yes, more satellite, capacity development, these are very important points. And Africa as a continent and the different countries, we need to be very serious about this. It needs to, what the key point that I'm taking away from today is sustainability. How all of every little things we do loop to become a cycle. So we should not just build satellite and go to rest, or we should not just focus on Earth observation and think, oh, we get data and we do it, because we need to develop capacity. Is very important. So yeah, every country need to contribute and, make very good efforts that is concrete. It's very important. It's concrete effort to push this further. Yeah. And I think also another point is, as Africa, different countries, we need to be more open with ourselves and support. I think the Egyptian Space Agency, they are in that aspect, I think they are number one in Africa. They are doing a lot to support, to train people and all of that. But of course, Africa is very large, so they cannot do everything. But I think they are doing a lot. So more African countries need to take this step, and yeah, let's help ourselves, and I think we can get there. And also I have a point, because I think we need to, I see many young Africans in conferences and all of that, and they just interested, they want to be astronauts. So we need to be real. Let's be real. Let's chase things that are tangible. I always tell them, but some of them don't like me, but I don't care. So I always tell them, be tangible. What do you want to do? You want to be astronauts? Cool. But when? Until when? When do you start? How do you start? You don't even know anything about being an astronaut. So I think this is very important also. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you, Taiwo. I think that's the feeling. I also had that feeling also when I first joined the sector, the space sector. There's this feeling of, because the astronauts are celebrities. So but as you go along, you now find out that there's more to be done down here than there. How many astronauts do we have globally? I don't know whether I don't think they're up to 1,000, but the whole industry, there are thousands of people. So we need to channel that, like you pointed out, that interest, that passion, that enthusiasm that young people have, and channel it for more productive use down here. Thank you. Yeah, Anita, you can go on. Anita?
Okay, thank you very much. I think my takeaway is the first one is about collaboration. So collaboration first in terms of we collaborating as companies and institutions working together. Because if we don't collaborate, those who are using our resources, that is those who are really using the space data, and those who are also manufacturing the satellite, if we don't have a common meeting point, at the end of the day, you'll see that we will be manufacturing the satellite, and the satellite will not be meeting the needs of the users. So there should be a form of collaboration between the users, that is the institutions and the companies. The next form of collaboration we'll talk about, I will talk about will be regional collaborations. So let's say West African region, we can come together, do need assessment to know what our need is and what do we need a satellite for. And we can come up with a satellite that will serve the needs of all the West African countries. So that one will help us, and it will save us money from buying data from our other countries. I was at a conference, and one of the space developers, the satellite developers from the other country, what they were saying is right now they have exhausted their market, and now Africa is their market, their target market. So how long are we going to sit and wait for people to make us their target market? So it means we have a lot of work to do. There is a need for us to put in work so that we also be self-sufficient in terms of space technology. So aside that, I think we also have to do a lot of trainings. So those we have sponsored to go outside to go for training, when they come back, we should give them the task to also train. Sometimes I know that the limitations will be they're not having enough resources. But if, as I said, if we have collaborations, then it means we'll be able to utilize the resources from other nations to also train our people. I think that's my takeaway for today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Anita. And thanks also for reminding us about intra-African cooperation, especially at the sub-regional level. Like you pointed out, there are a couple of activities going on. I know in SADC, they have a very strong program, which is led by Anneli Morgan. In East Africa, Charles mentioned the collaboration between Kenya and Ghana, and I think that should extend to other parts of East Africa. In West Africa, I'm aware of the ECOWAS program. I think ECOWAS is even planning to launch a satellite, ECOSAT. So it's also a challenge also for the African Space Agency. So many activities at the national level, many activities at the sub-regional level. How do you want to leverage on all these and channel this towards a singular effort? So, I mean, that's up to the African Space Agency to handle. All right. So, Doreen, yes. Hema, who wants to go next?
I can go.
Okay.
Yes. My final, perhaps, word of encouragement is that we have been told that there was once a space race and we are joining it late. But actually, the data on ground shows that this is a new space race, whereas the nations that engaged in the one in the previous decades was all about, national pride and, we want to be the first here and there. We actually have needs on ground that we want to solve. And I believe this is a renewed race, whether it is just for our continent or other players that would like to join us. And there's a very big move in reviewing what we want to do and how the environment, the ecosystem will enable or what modifications are needed. And to me, this is an exciting time because then we get to kind of rebuild what was claimed to be some sort of structure that we can't even touch. Now we can touch it, put some addendums to some resolutions, and give our input that is relevant to our setup. So I am grateful for this discussion. Thank you, Etem and Ashley, for the invitation. Let us rebuild. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Doreen. And the final word for our host, the host of the African Space Agency, Hema.
Yes, thank you, Ethan, for this event, and I'm ready to be here today. I agree with my colleagues, of course, the collaboration and the integration between the African country is the key point in the next decade. And I think this was one of the key points we have to rely on. And this is the point that the African Space Agency should focus on once started. I have just, as you may know, that the Egyptian Space Agency used to have a training session for all the African countries with the collaboration with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Egypt. So I think this is a good opportunity to announce that this year we are going to announce soon about the next training session. And we are going to announce this jointly with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs within 2 months from now. I think maybe in June or July, something like this. And we hope that this session we will include much large number of African engineers, and because first year we had around 14, and second year we have around 20, and I wish this year we can increase the number to maybe 25 or 30. So of course this is our capacity in the Egyptian Space Agency, and I'm quite sure that once we have this in future with the African Space Agency, maybe this number will be increased to serve many African engineers, and especially in the field of space technology and application. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Heman. And like Taiwo pointed out, Egypt is doing quite a lot when it comes to capacity building, and not just for Egypt. I mean, extending that effort to other African countries at the expense of the Egyptian government is very, very laudable. And of course, I believe we'll see more of that across the continent. Once again, I want to thank all the panelists for making time out for this very important discussion. And like I said, we are going to continue this discussion. And I mean, I think some of us are going to participate in the forthcoming New Space Africa conference at the end of April. So I look forward to seeing as many of us as possible there. If you're not aware of it, please, you can check online. The New Space Africa conference is coming up from the 25th to the 28th in Abidjan. And it's a huge conference. It's more, at least for now, it's the largest gathering for space in Africa. So it would be nice to see as many people there as possible. I've also talked about we following up this discussion with I don't know what to call it, a white paper or whatever, a public paper where we can share with the public and policymakers on the things we've discussed. And finally, from our side, at the ASLI, we are focusing more on policy and strategy and law governance issues. So we've started some courses which you may be interested in participating in. The first one is the space policy course, which starts next week, actually. So if you're interested also to know about space policy, both at the national level and international level, you're welcome to join. Some of the panelists are also going to facilitate, like Dr. Tejumola is going to be one of the facilitators there. So you're welcome to join. Once again, I want to thank everybody, Dr. Gaba, Doreen, Heyman Ahmed, Tejumola Taiwo, Anita Antwiwa, and those Charles who had to leave. Jesse could not make it. So thank you to all the participants. And I look forward to another opportunity of us having this kind of very important discussion. Thank you and have a good rest of the day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.